My name is Zara Mitchell, and I'm 37 years old. 4 months ago, I won $85 million in the Powerball lottery, the single biggest jackpot winner in Georgia state history. But I didn't tell a single soul. Not my parents, not my brother, not my so-called friends. Instead, I kept working my little freelance gig, kept driving my beaten-down Honda Civic, kept living in my cramped apartment in East Point where the AC only worked half the time. I pretended to be struggling, barely keeping my head above water. And then, I set a trap, a test disguised as a crisis. I'm about to lose everything. I cried to my family last Christmas Eve. I'm going to be homeless if nobody helps me. I made myself a promise right then and there, sitting in my cold apartment with eviction papers spread across my coffee table. Whoever helped me first, whoever showed up when I had nothing, would receive $15 million, no strings attached. Only one person offered to help. Only one. Before I tell you exactly what I did to everyone who turned their backs on me, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit that like button and subscribe if you've ever felt like the family disappointment, the one who never quite measured up no matter how hard you tried. The test actually began 4 months before that Christmas, at my parents' mandatory Sunday dinner in their pristine 5-bedroom home in Cascade Heights, one of Atlanta's most prestigious historic Black neighborhoods. In my family, Sunday dinners have never been about connection or love or genuine togetherness. They're performances, elaborate shows where everyone plays their assigned role. My father, James Mitchell, sits at the head of the table like he's presiding over a board meeting. My mother, Cheryl, orchestrates everything from the menu to the seating arrangement with military precision. My older brother, Devin, the eternal golden child, shows off his latest accomplishments like trophies. And me? I'm always cast as the cautionary tale, the example of what happens when you don't follow the family blueprint for success. The clinking of heavy sterling silver against bone china was the only sound cutting through the oppressive silence. We were gathered around their massive dining table, the one my mother had imported from somewhere in Europe, because she said it had better lines than anything made in America. My father, James, 64 years old, and recently retired from his position as a hospital administrator, let out one of his signature heavy sighs. It was a sound I knew intimately, had memorized every nuance of over 37 years. It was the sound of his profound disappointment in me, his younger child, his daughter who'd failed to live up to the Mitchell family standards. My brother Devin sat directly across from me. He's 41 years old, devastatingly successful as a corporate attorney at one of Atlanta's most prestigious firms, and he has this particular smile that never quite reaches his cold, calculating eyes. It's the smile of someone who's always known they were the favorite and has weaponized that knowledge their entire life. Beside him sat his wife, Jessica. She's white, blonde, 39 years old, originally from Connecticut, and she measures every single person's worth exclusively by their zip code, their job title, and the brand labels they wear. She was examining her freshly manicured nails, pearl white with subtle gold accents, as if they were the most fascinating thing in the entire universe. I just lost a major freelance contract that morning, my biggest client deciding to go with an agency instead of an independent consultant. I'm a social media strategist and digital marketing consultant, or as my family so dismissively calls it, Zara's little internet hobby. I'd made the catastrophic mistake of mentioning the lost contract, thinking maybe, just maybe, they might offer some sympathy or encouragement. I should have known better. Devin looked up from his perfectly plated grilled salmon, that smirk already forming on his lips before he even spoke. Another crisis already, Zara? I told you years ago that whole internet influencer career path wasn't sustainable. It's not a real profession. You should have gone to law school like I suggested. Jessica let out this small, delicate laugh that she'd perfected, the kind that sounds almost musical but cuts like a razor. Oh, Zara, sweetie. I really hope you're not planning to ask us for money again. Devin and I are in the middle of closing on the lake house in North Carolina, and you know how expensive these things get. The market is absolutely insane right now. I felt that familiar burning heat rise from my chest into my cheeks, that shame I'd carried since childhood settling back into its usual place in my stomach. I hadn't even considered asking them for money. The thought hadn't crossed my mind. But they just automatically assumed, Because in their eyes, I was and always would be the charity case, the family failure, the one with her hand perpetually out. My mother, Cheryl, finally spoke, setting down her crystal wine glass with that decisive little click she'd perfected over decades of dinner table domination. Zara, baby, you're 37 years old. Don't you think it's past time to get serious about building a real life? Just look at your brother. He's a senior partner at his firm. They have that beautiful house in Buckhead, those gorgeous children. That's what stability looks like. We're just worried about you, honey. We want better for you. My father nodded in stern agreement, his gaze heavy with judgment and unspoken criticism. We gave you every opportunity, Zara. We paid for that expensive private college education at Spelman. We supported you when you wanted to go to that fancy design school in New York, and you just threw it all away when you dropped out. We expected so much more from you. I clenched my fists under the table so hard my nails dug into my palms, the pain grounding me, keeping me from saying what I really thought. They always brought up the design school. They never mentioned that they'd wanted me to become a lawyer like Devin, that they'd pressured me relentlessly to follow the exact same path. I was the one who'd wanted to study design and creative marketing, and when I dropped out halfway through my second year, not because I was failing or because I couldn't handle the work, but because I literally could not breathe under the crushing weight of their impossible expectations and my own mounting anxiety and depression, they didn't see it as a mental health crisis or a cry for help. They saw it as a personal betrayal, a public humiliation, a waste of their money and their precious Mitchell family name. I looked across the table at my brother, who was already transitioning smoothly into discussing his latest golf tournament victory with my father, both of them laughing about something I wasn't included in. I looked at my sister-in-law Jessica, who was now scrolling through her iPhone, probably looking at furniture catalogs for her new lake house, or posting something carefully curated on her Instagram about their perfect family life. They had absolutely no idea, not the faintest clue. They had no idea about the $85 million sitting in a newly established LLC that I'd named after the only person in this entire family who had ever truly believed in me, who had ever seen my worth. They thought I was a failure, a disappointment, a cautionary tale, and sitting right there at that polished dining table, feeling small and worthless and invisible, I made a decision. I would let them keep thinking exactly that. I drove home that evening in my rattling 12-year-old Honda Civic, the one with the temperamental transmission and the passenger door that didn't quite close right. My knuckles were white on the steering wheel, gripping it so tightly my hands ached. Every single word from that dinner echoed and bounced around in my car like accusations I couldn't escape. Not stable. Not a real job. Embarrassment. Worried about you. The shame that washed over me was so familiar, so well worn. It felt like a heavy winter coat I'd been wearing my entire life and couldn't figure out how to take off. I parked in my assigned spot behind the aging 3-story apartment complex in East Point, the building with peeling beige paint and flickering hallway lights that buzzed like dying insects. It was a universe away, a completely different world from their pristine colonial-style house in Cascade Heights with its manicured lawn and 3-car garage. I let myself into my small 1-bedroom apartment, Unit 2C. It was clean because I kept it that way, but the air felt stale and heavy with failure and disappointment and broken dreams. I didn't bother turning on the main overhead light, just flicked on the small lamp by the door, the one I'd bought at Target 5 years ago. On my kitchen counter, illuminated by weak yellow light, was the pile. The dreaded pile that I'd been avoiding looking at for days. Red envelopes, final notices printed on urgent pink paper, collection agency letters, and sitting right on top was the rent check I'd written to my landlord. Still sitting there unsent because I knew it would bounce. Knew my account was $200 short. The rent was now 8 days past due. I sank heavily into one of my mismatched kitchen chairs, the cheap pressed wood creaking under my weight. This was it. This was the consequence of my choices, my failures, my inability to be who they wanted me to be. 37 years old, and I was about to be evicted. About to be homeless. I stared at that pile of bills, feeling panic rising in my throat like bile, choking me. I needed to do something, anything, to distract myself for just one moment before I had to call my landlord and beg for yet another extension, promising I'd have the money by Friday, even though I had no idea where it would come from. My worn canvas purse was on the counter next to the bills. Inside, crumpled at the bottom beneath old receipts and used tissues, was the Powerball ticket I'd bought last week at the gas station on my way home from a client meeting. I only ever bought lottery tickets when the jackpot got absolutely massive, made national news, and I always played the exact same numbers, my Aunt Evelyn's birthday numbers. She was the only one who'd ever made me feel like I mattered. I pulled out my phone with numb, trembling fingers and opened the Georgia Lottery website. I smoothed the crumpled ticket out on the counter, right next to the bright pink final notice from Georgia Power threatening to shut off my electricity. I checked the winning numbers that had been drawn 3 nights ago: 15, 23, 42, 48, 51, and Powerball 7. My eyes scanned my ticket slowly, not really believing, not really hoping. 15, 23, 42, 48, 51, Powerball 7. I stopped breathing entirely. The world seemed to tilt sideways, the room spinning. It had to be a mistake. Some kind of cruel joke. I checked the Powerball number again. The red number on the website said 7. My ticket said 7. I refreshed the page frantically, my hands shaking so badly I almost dropped my phone. The numbers stayed the same. I checked my ticket again, smoothing it out completely, making absolutely certain I was reading it correctly. The numbers were still there, still matching, still perfect. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't gasp or jump up or celebrate. Instead, a strange, cold, heavy silence filled my tiny apartment, a silence that felt louder and more overwhelming than any sound I'd ever heard in my entire life. I just sat there frozen, staring at that flimsy piece of paper that had just completely invalidated and transformed everything about my existence up to this exact moment. My entire reality had shifted, and nobody in the world knew it but me. Eventually, I slid down onto the floor, my back pressed against the kitchen cabinets, sitting on cold linoleum. My hands were shaking uncontrollably, but somewhere deep inside, I felt oddly, eerily calm. I checked the numbers a 3rd time, then a 4th, then a 5th. They didn't change. They were real. $85 million. After taxes, roughly $51 million as a lump sum. The words just hung there in the air of my small, silent apartment, impossible to fully comprehend. The phone in my hand suddenly buzzed, making me jump so violently I nearly dropped it. The sound felt violent and intrusive in the stillness. It was a notification from the Mitchell family group chat, the one I could never leave without causing a massive scene. I opened it with shaking fingers. My mother had posted a photo. It was Devin, grinning his perfect, polished, practiced grin, holding up an ornate silver trophy from his country club's annual golf tournament. The caption read, "Our champion. So incredibly proud of Devin's big win today. Excellence runs in the family." I stared at that photo. Devin the champion. My mother so proud. Jessica probably taking the picture, already mentally planning where to display that trophy in their massive Buckhead house for maximum visibility to guests. My heart didn't race with excitement. It didn't pound with joy or relief. Instead, it just slowed down, became steady, cold. Everything went crystalline and sharp and clear. All the noise that had been screaming in my head for years, the constant panic about money, the crushing shame from every family dinner, the voice that told me I was worthless and would never be enough, it all just stopped, completely stopped. I looked at the glowing screen of my phone showing my successful family. Then I looked at the lottery ticket clutched in my other hand. Then I looked at the stack of red final notices. And I made a decision that would change everything. They would not know. Nobody would know. The next morning, I didn't call my landlord to beg for an extension. I didn't reach out to my struggling freelance clients. I didn't respond to my mother's group chat message. I woke up at 5:30 a.m., took a long shower, and put on my one good business suit, the charcoal gray one I kept pressed and ready for job interviews that never seemed to go well. I didn't call my brother's law firm for advice. Instead, I called Crawford & Associates, the most ruthlessly efficient, discreet, and expensive legal firm in Atlanta, the kind of firm my father both respected and feared. "I need to speak with your most experienced estate planning attorney immediately," I said to the receptionist, my voice sounding different in my own ears, clearer and colder and more authoritative than I'd ever heard it. "This is a matter of extreme and urgent financial significance." They must have heard something in my tone, some steel I didn't know I possessed. I had an appointment scheduled for 9:30 a.m. I walked into their downtown office in the gleaming skyscraper, the lottery ticket secured in a sealed envelope inside my suit jacket, pressed against my racing heart. The lobby was all polished marble, dark mahogany wood, and abstract art that probably cost more than my car. It smelled like old money and new power and intimidation. A distinguished black man in his 60s named Gregory Thompson met me in a private conference room. He looked like he ate corporate lawyers like Devin for breakfast and spit them out before lunch. I didn't waste a single second on pleasantries or small talk. "I won the Powerball," I said, sliding the ticket across the mahogany table. $85 million. Nobody knows. Nobody can know. And I need you to make absolutely certain it stays that way. Mr. Thompson's expression didn't change at all. He simply picked up the ticket with latex-gloved hands, examined it carefully, then looked at me with something that might have been respect. Smart woman. Most people would have already told everyone they know. Then the vultures descend. "My family are the vultures," I said quietly. He smiled, a knowing smile. "Then let's clip their wings before they even know there's prey." We spent the next 6 hours in that conference room, ordering lunch brought in, going over every detail. Mr. Thompson brought in specialists, tax attorneys, financial advisors, estate planners. We created an LLC called the Evelyn Mitchell Foundation, named after my aunt. The lottery ticket would be claimed through the LLC, keeping my name completely private from public records. We set up multiple accounts, established a trust, created an investment strategy that would turn my $51 million after taxes into generational wealth. "Now, Mr. Thompson said as the sun began to set outside the window overlooking downtown Atlanta, "tell me about your family." I told him everything, every dismissive comment, every time they'd made me feel worthless, every Sunday dinner where I was the punchline. I told him about Devin's condescension, Jessica's cruelty, my parents' disappointment. I told him about Aunt Evelyn, my father's younger sister, the one the family barely acknowledged because she ran a struggling community center in Southwest Atlanta instead of pursuing wealth and status. "I want to test them," I said finally. "I want to create a crisis and see who actually shows up." Mr. Thompson leaned back in his leather chair. "That's not about revenge. That's about truth. And truth can be more devastating than any revenge you could plan." Over the next 3 months, I played my role perfectly. I kept working freelance gigs, kept struggling, kept driving my dying car. I started planting seeds carefully and deliberately. At Sunday dinners, I'd mention casually that I was behind on rent, that a client hadn't paid me, that I was worried about making ends meet. My family's responses were predictable and heartbreaking. My mother would sigh and change the subject. My father would lecture me about financial responsibility while sipping his expensive bourbon. Devin would smirk and make comments about real jobs. Jessica would literally turn away and start talking about their upcoming vacation to the Bahamas. I documented everything in a private journal. Every dismissive comment. Every time they could have helped with even a word of encouragement but chose not to. I was building a case, collecting evidence. Meanwhile, I secretly paid off all my debts, moved money into accounts they couldn't trace, and started planning. The only person I told anything to, the only person I hinted might be getting a surprise, was Aunt Evelyn. "Baby girl, you seem different lately," she said one Sunday when I visited her community center, a place my family never set foot in. "Like you're carrying a secret." "Maybe I am, Auntie," I said, smiling for the first time in months. "Maybe I am." December arrived cold and clear. I prepared for the final test. On December 15th, exactly 2 weeks before Christmas, I sent a carefully crafted message to the family group chat. My hands were steady as I typed it. "I need help. I'm about to lose everything. My landlord filed eviction papers. I have until January 5th to pay $4,800 or I'm out on the street. I've never asked for anything, but I'm desperate. If anyone can help even a little, I'm begging you. I don't know what else to do. I hit send and watched the 3 dots appear immediately as people started typing. My mother responded first. Oh, Zara, this is so stressful to read. But you know your father and I are on a fixed retirement income now. We simply can't spare that kind of money. Have you tried applying for assistance programs? My father added, This is exactly what I warned you about. You should have gotten a stable job with benefits. This is a tough lesson, but you need to figure this out on your own. That's how you build character. Devin's message came next. Sis, I wish I could help, but Jessica and I just put a huge down payment on the lake house. We're completely tapped out. Maybe you should consider moving to a cheaper place or getting a roommate? Just some tough love advice. Jessica actually sent a separate message just to me. Zara, I don't mean to be harsh, but this is kind of a pattern with you. Maybe losing your apartment will be the wake-up call you need to get serious about your career. Sometimes we need to hit rock bottom before we can climb back up. I read every message, my face completely blank. Not a single offer of help. Not even a, let me see what I can do, or can we talk about this? Just excuses, lectures, and barely concealed judgment. They were willing to let me become homeless, and they felt completely justified in it. I took screenshots of everything and sent them to Mr. Thompson. Evidence collected, I typed. Proceeding to phase 2. I waited 3 days, letting them stew in their self-righteousness, before I made one more call. This one wasn't to the family group chat. It was a private call to Aunt Evelyn. I told her about the eviction, keeping my voice shaky and scared. She lived on a fixed income from her community center salary, barely made $30,000 a year, had medical bills from her diabetes medications. Baby, she said, and I heard her voice crack with emotion. Baby, I don't have that much in savings, but I have my house. I've had it paid off for 5 years now. I can take out a home equity line of credit. It'll take a few days, but I can get you that money. You are not going to be homeless. Do you hear me? Your family. I actually cried then, real tears that I couldn't control. Not because I needed her money, because she was willing to risk everything for me when my wealthy family, with their paid-off homes and investment portfolios and luxury vacations, wouldn't spare a dime. Auntie, no, I said, barely getting the words out. I can't let you do that. That's your house, your security. You listen to me, Zara Michelle Mitchell, she said in that firm voice that had comforted me through every childhood disappointment. That house is just bricks and wood. You're my blood, my heart. We'll figure it out together. I'm calling the bank tomorrow morning. I let her think she was going to help me. I let her start the process. And then on December 23rd, 2 days before Christmas, I called an emergency family meeting. I need to tell everyone something, I said in the group chat. It's important. Can everyone come to Mom and Dad's house tomorrow at 2 p.m.? Please, I really need the whole family there. My mother responded, Zara, honey, we're in the middle of holiday preparations. Can this wait? No, Mom, I typed. It really can't. Please. It's urgent. They agreed, probably thinking I was going to beg in person, give them another opportunity to lecture me about responsibility, while sipping their expensive wine and eating their catered Christmas appetizers. December 24th, Christmas Eve. I arrived at my parents' house at exactly 2 p.m. I was wearing my usual outfit, nothing special, carrying a large leather portfolio case that Mr. Thompson had provided. Everyone was already there, my parents on their throne-like armchairs, Devin and Jessica on the couch, looking annoyed at having their holiday interrupted. And in the corner, Aunt Evelyn, who I'd specifically asked to come, looking worried and protective. All right, Zara, my father said, glancing at his expensive watch. We're all here. What's this urgent matter? I set the portfolio on the coffee table and took a deep breath. First, I want to thank Aunt Evelyn, I said, my voice steady. She was the only person in this entire family who offered to help me when I was facing eviction. She was willing to put her house on the line for me. Aunt Evelyn looked confused. My mother rolled her eyes slightly. Yes, well, Evelyn always was too generous for her own good, my mother said dismissively. Now, what did you need to tell us? I opened the portfolio and pulled out a folder, setting it on the table. 4 months ago, I won the Powerball lottery. $85 million. The silence that followed was absolute. You could have heard a pin drop on the thick carpet. Devin actually laughed, a sharp, disbelieving bark of sound. Yeah, right. Good one, Zara. Very funny. Now what's really going on? I pulled out the official letter from the Georgia Lottery Commission, the one confirming my claim through the LLC. I set it on the table facing them. My father leaned forward, squinting at the letter. His face went pale. This can't be real. It's very real, I said calmly. Mr. Gregory Thompson of Crawford & Associates handled everything. The money has been claimed, taxes paid, investments made. I'm worth approximately $51 million right now. My mother's hand went to her chest. 51. Zara, my God, why didn't you tell us? Because I wanted to know who you all really were, I said, my voice cold. I wanted to see what you would do if you thought I had nothing. If you thought I was the failure you've always told me I was. Jessica stood up, her face flushed. So you lied to us? You manipulated us? That's sick, Zara. I didn't lie about anything, I corrected her. I told you I was facing eviction. That was true before I won. I told you I needed help. That was also true. You all chose not to help. That's on you. Devin was shaking his head, his lawyer mind already working. This is insane. We're family. Of course we would have helped if we'd known you had money. If I had money? I interrupted, my voice rising. So you only help family when they don't need it? When there's something in it for you? My father stood up, trying to take control of the situation. Now, Zara, let's just calm down and discuss this rationally. This is wonderful news. We should celebrate. We can help you manage this money. Invest it properly. Devin knows all the best financial advisors. I don't need Devin's advisors, I said. I have my own team. The best in Atlanta. The same firm you use for your estate planning, Dad. I pulled out more papers from the portfolio. And while we're being honest about everything, let's talk about some other interesting things I learned. I set down a document in front of Devin. This is a forensic accounting report. Turns out my successful lawyer brother has been embezzling from his firm's client trust accounts for the past 3 years. About $380,000 total, to be exact. Devin's face went from red to white in seconds. How did you? I hired investigators, I said simply. What else was I going to do with all that money? They were very thorough. Jessica lunged toward the papers, but I had already handed copies to my parents. Your lake house? Your luxury cars? Your private school tuition for the kids? All funded by stolen money. Devin has been committing felony embezzlement, and Jessica absolutely knew about it because she signed the tax returns. You bitch, Jessica hissed. You vindictive little bitch. Careful, I said mildly. Everything you say right now is being recorded. I pointed to the small camera I'd set up on the bookshelf, the one Mr. Thompson had insisted on. Devin, I've already sent all the evidence to the State Bar Association and the District Attorney's Office. They'll be contacting you after the holidays. My brother looked like he might vomit. My father sank back into his chair. Zara, you can't. He's your brother. We're family. You keep saying that word, I said. Family. But you've never treated me like family. You've treated me like an obligation, an embarrassment, a cautionary tale. The only real family I have is right there. I pointed to Aunt Evelyn, who was crying silently. Aunt Evelyn was willing to lose her house for me. What were any of you willing to sacrifice? My mother finally spoke, her voice trembling. So what now? What do you want from us? I don't want anything from you, I said. I just wanted you to know the truth, and I wanted to tell you what I'm doing with the money. I pulled out the final document. I've established the Evelyn Mitchell Foundation with a $20 million endowment. It's going to fund Aunt Evelyn's community center, expand it, and provide scholarships for kids in underserved neighborhoods. The kind of kids you've always looked down on, Mom. The kind of kids you drove past without a second glance. I turned to my aunt. Auntie, you're never going to have to worry about funding again. You're never going to have to choose between your medication and keeping the lights on. And you're getting $15 million personally for being the only person who showed up. Aunt Evelyn gasped, her hand over her mouth. Baby, no, that's too much. I can't. Yes, you can, I said firmly. You earned it by being actual family when nobody else was. Devin was on his feet, his face twisted with rage and desperation. You can't give away that money. Some of that should go to your nephew and nieces, to your family. You mean your kids? I asked coldly. The ones I've seen maybe 5 times in the last year because you were always too busy? The ones you taught to call me Aunt Disaster? Those kids? He had no response to that. I'm not giving you a dime, Devin, I continued. Not to keep you out of prison. Not to save your marriage. Not to maintain your lifestyle. You made your choices. Now live with the consequences. That's what you've always told me, right? Tough love? I looked at my parents. And you two? You get nothing except the knowledge that you raised one child to be a criminal and treated the other like garbage. That's your legacy. Congratulations. I picked up my portfolio and walked to the door. Aunt Evelyn stood and followed me, still crying. Zara, please, my mother called out. Don't do this. Don't tear this family apart. I turned back one last time. I'm not tearing anything apart, Mom. I'm just removing myself from a family that was never whole to begin with. Merry Christmas. I walked out with Aunt Evelyn, leaving them in their expensive house with their expensive furniture and their complete and utter devastation. As we drove away, Aunt Evelyn in my car because I wasn't letting her out of my sight, she finally spoke. Baby girl, what just happened? Justice, Auntie, I said, smiling for the first time in months. Justice happened. The fallout was swift and brutal. Within a week, the State Bar Association opened an investigation into Devin's activities. Within 2 weeks, he was arrested on multiple counts of embezzlement and fraud. Jessica filed for divorce before he was even processed into the county jail, taking the kids and moving back to Connecticut to live with her parents. My brother went from successful attorney to convicted felon in less than 6 months. He was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. My parents tried to reach out multiple times. I blocked their numbers. They showed up at my new office, the headquarters for the Evelyn Mitchell Foundation. Security escorted them out. They sent letters. I burned them without reading them. They tried to use flying monkeys, distant cousins and family friends to plead their case. I cut off anyone who brought them up. My mother actually had the audacity to call Aunt Evelyn, begging her to convince me to forgive them. Aunt Evelyn, bless her heart, told her, My sister, you spent 37 years telling that girl she wasn't good enough. She finally believed you. Now you have to live with what you created. The community center transformation took 6 months of intensive work. Architects, contractors, designers, all working to turn Aunt Evelyn's struggling facility into a state-of-the-art community hub. We added a full computer lab with the latest technology. We built a recording studio for kids interested in music. We created a commercial kitchen for culinary training. We established a scholarship fund that would pay for college for 50 students every year. The grand opening was in June, and over 500 people showed up from the neighborhood. Local news covered it. The mayor gave a speech. And Aunt Evelyn, wearing a beautiful dress I'd bought her, cut the ribbon with tears streaming down her face. This is what legacy looks like, she whispered to me. Not money, not status. Love in action. I moved into a gorgeous penthouse in Midtown Atlanta, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline. I furnished it with beautiful things, art and furniture that I chose because I loved them, not because they would impress anyone. I bought myself a new car, nothing flashy, just reliable and comfortable. I traveled to places I'd always dreamed of visiting. I donated to causes I believed in. I lived quietly, comfortably, authentically, and I slept better than I had in 37 years. One evening, about 8 months after that Christmas Eve confrontation, I was sitting on my balcony watching the sunset paint the Atlanta skyline in shades of gold and crimson when my assistant brought up the mail. Among the bills and charity requests was a thin envelope with a return address from a federal correctional institution. I knew immediately who it was from. I opened it. The handwriting was Devin's, rushed and angry and desperate. I read his words with a completely calm expression, no emotion crossing my face. Zara, I don't understand. How could you do this to me? I'm your brother. We're family. Family is supposed to be the most important thing. You had $85 million. You could have saved me. You could have paid the restitution. It would have been nothing to you, just a tiny fraction of what you have. But you chose to destroy me instead. Mom and Dad lost their retirement savings trying to pay my legal fees. They had to sell the house. Jessica took my kids back to Connecticut, and I won't see them grow up. My career is over. My life is over. All because you wanted revenge. I'm sitting in a prison cell while you live in luxury because you got lucky with a lottery ticket. That's not justice. That's cruelty. Why did you hate me so much? What did I ever do to deserve this? I read the letter a second time, carefully, looking for one specific word. Looking for sorry. Looking for I was wrong. Looking for I'm ashamed of what I did. It wasn't there. Not once. He wasn't sorry for embezzling money. He wasn't sorry for committing felonies. He wasn't sorry for preaching tough love while funding his lifestyle with stolen money. He wasn't sorry for treating me like garbage my entire life. He was just sorry he got caught. He was just angry that the failure he'd dismissed for 37 years suddenly had all the power and had used it against him. He still didn't understand. He never would. I thought about my family's so-called love. The love they'd offered me my whole life. It was conditional, transactional, based entirely on what I could do for their image and their comfort. They only loved the version of me that fit their narrative, their perfect family picture. When I didn't fit, I was discarded, dismissed, diminished. The irony is that when I gave them a test based on their own rules, their own values of success and failure, and who deserves help, they failed spectacularly. All of them, except Aunt Evelyn. She taught me what real family looks like. Real family shows up when you have nothing to offer them. Real family mortgages their own security to protect yours. Real family loves you unconditionally, not because of what you've achieved, but because of who you are. The $85 million was never the prize. It was never about the money itself. It was a tool, a spotlight, a truth serum that revealed who everyone really was underneath their polished exteriors. And all I did was turn on that spotlight and let it illuminate the darkness that had always been there. I looked at Devin's desperate, self-pitying letter one more time. I felt nothing. No anger, no hatred, no satisfaction, no regret, just emptiness where his opinion of me used to live. The space he and my parents had occupied in my head and my heart was finally, blessedly clean. I didn't write him back. There was nothing to say. I walked over to the paper shredder by my desk, the expensive one that could handle staples and credit cards. I folded his letter carefully, feeding it into the machine. The low mechanical hum as it tore his words into 1,000 tiny, meaningless pieces was the only sound in my quiet penthouse. The sun had fully set now. The city was a sea of glittering lights stretching to the horizon. I poured myself a glass of very expensive wine, the kind Jessica would have posted about on Instagram, the kind my mother would have served at her dinner parties. I walked back out onto the balcony. The June air was warm and soft, carrying the sounds of the city up 40 stories. I was no longer the girl in the threadbare sweater living in the apartment with bad AC. I was no longer the family disappointment. I was no longer poor, struggling Zara who needed saving. I raised my glass to the city below, to my new life, to the freedom I'd finally claimed. My voice was soft but steady as I spoke out loud to the night air. They took everything from me, my confidence, my dignity, my sense of worth, and in doing so, they gave me everything. They gave me clarity. They gave me strength. They gave me freedom. I smiled, a real genuine smile, because I'd learned the most valuable lesson of my life. The people who truly love you will show up when you have nothing to give them. Everyone else is just performing, playing a role, waiting for their turn to benefit from your success or judge your failures. Money doesn't make people cruel or kind. It just amplifies what was always there. My family's cruelty was always present, just hidden under a veneer of respectability and family obligation. Aunt Evelyn's kindness was always present, just underappreciated and taken for granted. The lottery didn't change anyone. It just revealed them. And my greatest victory wasn't winning $85 million. It was using that money to build something meaningful, to fund my aunt's legacy, to help kids who reminded me of myself, kids who were told they weren't good enough. My greatest victory was walking away from people who would never value me and building a life surrounded by people who do. If you were in my position, with $85 million and a family who'd shown their true colors, what would you have done? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And remember, real wealth isn't measured in dollars. It's measured in who shows up when you need them most. That's the only currency that truly matters.